We heard from a lot of readers who said that they were concerned that the rapid pace of development was making flooding worse. There was a lot of reporting from the Times that found that outdated stormwater and flood drainage systems in certain areas were overwhelmed. So I guess first off, what can the public sector and different municipalities do to solve for this and make sure that we're able to preserve our flood and stormwater systems?
And what can the private sector do? Please stop turfing your property. Please stop, because it does not flow. It is not pervious surface. So please stop doing those things. I think it's a partnership on what we all can do. Please stop blowing your leaves into the stormwater drains, because that doesn't help either. We have to work together. We have to work together. This is not just a public sector problem. And it's not just a public sector responsibility. It is all of our responsibility. And I think we are looking at, and we already have committed to, we're already out, the city is already out repairing and preparing for the upcoming storm season, including the installation of temporary pumps, including the installation of permanent pumps, including the installation of generators. The other thing that goes with that is, though, these generators aren't going to be placed at ground level where they're going to get flooded. They're going to be placed in an area where they're going to work when the water comes in. That might not look so fancy, so this is all about trade-offs and balance. And like I said, partnership both with the public and the homeowners. I think that the storm season was tough, and I know, I'm out there, I know that people are not back in their homes. I know driving here, I could still see the water line on the houses in the Palmetto Beach area, and it's heartbreaking, but it's not something we're the only city facing. I look at California and the houses that burnt down, and you look and they say, well, what do you do about development? You just don't develop there anymore. Well, it's a lot, and it's a lot on our infrastructure system, and we're on it. I mean, we're undertaking it.
I believe there's a regional stormwater study that's undergoing, that's a city and county study, including Plant City and Temple Terrace, where they're looking at a whole host of different, like, why these problems occurred, and then what are a whole host of solutions that can be employed, because I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all type of situation. And it might not, the solution may be different in different parts of our community. And I think there is a role that, that development can play as being a part of the solution. And some of the older parts of our community, you look at areas like in the university area where along Fowler Avenue, it's almost entirely impervious surface. That's not the standard today. So if there is redevelopment along a corridor like that, that redevelopment could really improve the stormwater situation along that corridor. So that's an example of how redevelopment could really improve the stormwater situation. So, but that's how it could occur in one area, and in a different area where it's a green field, it might be a different standard in a different situation. And so I think it's really not a one-size-fits-all solution, and we need to let that study play out to see what all the solutions are and how they can best be deployed.
Right. Abby, as you pointed out, this is not just on the shoulders of our public officials. A lot of people say, builders like Casey, Kartik, they say there's too many people moving here, they're overwhelming our systems. There's not enough resources to go around. Like, what do you say to that? How, if you're going to build and going to build dense, can you build in a way and that helps mitigate some of the flooding? Or what are you doing at some of your projects that you think will help with these problems?
So at the central, I mentioned the amenity deck. So we have a parking garage in the center of the site that's about a little over an acre, almost an acre and a half in size. And so the roof of that parking garage is about 70% green when we complete. So you won't have stormwater runoff coming off of the top of that large piece of concrete that would typically just be either exposed cars or whatever. It would just pour water into the system and down the sides. And so, and we're also on that project, the roof of the workforce housing is also a green roof, similar, also heat capture, rain capture, all of those things. So we're being very mindful at the Y. All of the major roofs at the Y are green. Again, trying to mitigate a little bit of that impact as densification continues to happen in and around us. And so when we do our part, we're trying to be responsible about it.
I think in greenfield settings, with the regulations, it gives an inherent, I would say, a different setting and a little bit of an advantage. Because you mentioned about the storm studies, some of the other, generators, and those are the things that are already factored in. The roads are typically higher. The homes are set much higher. All the lift stations already have backup generators. The way we design the parks are that they do end up into like overflow areas if the ponds end up overflowing with hurricanes to, help absorb that and hold that. So I would say, that just over time, in one way, as regulations evolve, that kind of does help creating and mitigating some of these things by building more resilient infrastructure, because you are building to a much newer, higher standard based on, more current data than, infrastructure that has been around for maybe 50 years or 100 years. And as you all said, super hard to retrofit. So that, I think just by the nature of that, it just makes it slightly better for everyone.
And at GasWorks, we are raising all of the roads, right? And the new codes, there's been a lot of changes to the building code in the last 50 years. And a lot of the new codes are really good, especially when it comes to flooding and things like that. But we're also undergrounding the utilities and working with TECO to underground our utilities to kind of mitigate the impact of wind affecting the grid there. It also adds a lot of beauty and allows for more pleasant street environment, I believe. But all of the infrastructure is being replaced. All of the utilities are being undergrounded. All the buildings are thinking about these things and meeting the current codes. And I think it's not about what can the public sector do and what can the private sector do. Let's be honest. The public sector and the private sector are working together every single day for all of these things. And if we can figure out how a project like GasWorks, a project like the Central, a project like Kartik's project can provide value to our public sector, and they're doing it every single day. That is the message that we need to figure out how to tell the community, because in my opinion, redevelopment and new development should not be bad. It should not be a bad word. Bad development should be a bad word, but not new development and redevelopment, because the honest answer is that we are going to have to build new communities in terms of rebuilding buildings, redeveloping areas over the next 100 years. We're just going to have to. And so let's embrace that and do it in the right way, rather than making the developer the enemy and then not getting anything in return. You're getting the same parking lot that's sitting there degrading our community, not paying taxes, et cetera.